I feel like I start every single update video with saying how it's been too long since I worked on this, and I'm not lying. It's always been too long since I worked on something. I love working on my cars. I don't have as much time as I used to. I still acquire projects like I do, but we're working on that. Speaking of working on things, this is going to run. In this video, this is going to run. I promise you. Okay, I can't make that promise, but I'm going to do everything I can to get this to run. The last video I did on this, I put the engine in after doing a whole bunch of stuff. It kind of snowballed. All my projects are like that. But I am just going to connect everything. That's all I got to do is just plug everything in, connect everything, feed it a bunch of parts, and a battery that has 12 volts, and it should start, in theory. If this is the very first video you're seeing on this car, you probably have a lot of questions, and they can all be answered if you watch the previous videos. There's probably 3 videos on this car, from when I bought it thinking it wasn't a project, to quickly realizing it was a project, to pulling the engine out, and shocks, and a bunch of... The term snowball is pretty appropriate in this situation. So, I'm hoping that we're on the downside of the bell curve for work input. Let's get started. The engine and transmission are bolted in their mounts, so I need to start with all the stuff on the bottom. The first thing I'm going to do is put the clutch hydraulics back in, and then we'll put all the cross-member stuff, the axles in, shifter linkage. Yeah, all that stuff is what I'm going to do first. Now this looks especially fun to me. I don't really remember. It was like last year when I put this together. Well, I was really riding that struggle bus for a minute, and then my brain worked. What I ended up doing is compressing the slave cylinder on part of the transmission with one hand, using the other hand to put this brake line clamp on, and that kind of keeps, I wouldn't call it a vacuum, but less pressure on the slave cylinder, so it's collapsed a little bit so I can get it lined up since it doesn't sit on studs. And hopefully this idea works for me. Because if it doesn't, I mean, it should have. It doesn't seem to be all very happy right now. But I think I'm close. Let's try to get a bolt in it. Once we get 2 bolts in it, we'll be good. And it's not working too well. Let's keep at this. Well, that wasn't that easy. It was easier to come out than it was to go in. Took both hands and copious amounts of force. Probably could have done that a little bit easier. Hopefully there's not a next time, though. Let's get that tightened down the old-fashioned way. I think this does have a torque spec. It is snug. The top one's easy, but... Click, click. Perfect. Now, all I gotta do is get in the car, press the clutch, and blow the slave cylinder up because I didn't get it lined up. Just kidding. Next, let's get these axles connected. And I feel like this is gonna be a lot of fun, just because I have the parking brake on. So if I just turn the transmission... Nope. We're gonna go take the parking brake off. Now, the parking brake is off. I don't know why I didn't have the parking brake off before, but the fact is, I didn't. So this should be pretty simple. We just have to put the bolts in. That's it. I mean, it doesn't get any easier. Just put bolts in. All right, let's reinstall that parking brake. Get all these snug down. Move on to shifter cables. Okay. All right, in the previous video on this car, I mentioned that the shifter cables were held in with zip ties and how I wasn't a fan. And then a lot of you said that's just how they are. Well, I gotta tell you, I'm still not a fan. It's It's not my thing. Zip ties work in non-OEM applications and just fine, and you know, they do their job. Nothing against zip ties, but I can see why they could be used here because they don't really sit in here that well. But there's got to be a better way. Now we can get this cross member in. Next, time to install the sway bar. Next, we'll get the two heater hoses in place. Next, we'll get this connecting bar in. There's a few more connectors to put in here. We'll get both sides in real quick. All this stuff is super easy. I suppose we'll just start plugging things in. We'll start with the harness. There's two big connectors here on the harness. They're really not hard to get to. Just gonna make sure I connect the right one to the right one. I don't really know which ones. I think they only go on one way, so I'm not really that concerned about it. There's one. Two. Gotta make sure they click in. Yep, they're clicked in. Now we can work on the power steering lines. Pretty much have to do this by feel. It's the only way it's happening. This is a ton of fun, let me tell you. Alright, there's one. That wasn't terrible. Hardest part is that the non-fixed, the spinning fittings, the fittings that you use to tighten, are on the car's lines and not the pump's lines. So that makes it a little bit more challenging. When I took this apart, I noted that this nut was missing. This doesn't really fit that great here. Something tells me that something's just not perfect. It's about as good as it's going to get for right now. This is going to be a later scenario, but now we can start connecting all of this stuff. Now we can start installing the air conditioning lines here. I swear, some people do more damage than good. At least that's easy to get to if I ever need to get in there, replace an O-ring, or check for a leak. This is the one that's going to be not nearly as much fun. Now, before I start putting the radiator hose in, I need to get the oxygen sensors connected here. These fit in here a certain way. This would be a lot easier if I did this all the time. Alright, I think that's somewhat reasonable. Now I just have, I thought there was another one. Nope, is that? Okay, this. This is what I don't remember where that goes. Next, I'll install the power steering reservoir. Looks like I put that bolt in a little early. Now it is time to install the radiator hose, or at least one of them. Hopefully I can do this right. It only goes on one of two ways, so can I do this wrong? That's the real question. That would be a challenge. There we go. Now we just have a couple of these clamps to tighten, and it'll be a breeze. See what I did there? Alright, we'll just give it a little check with the old quarter drive ratchet, just to make sure that we got the proper amount of snugs on it. That's pretty snug. Good enough for me. Alright, now that we can get the belt on it, let's see if I can remember how to do this. It's been a bit. I think it's this. Could check the old, Google, but I'm already here. We're just gonna assume this is it. Also, should have saved the water pump for last. In fact, so much so that I'll just get some extra slack out of it right now. I think we can do this now. And we're on everything correctly. Yep. That was easy. I'm going to take a minute and get the other two oxygen sensors plugged in. Pretty straightforward what goes where. And it is cold outside. My heater is working overtime. Sorry about the background noise. Oh, this one's going to go here. This one goes here. And done. Now I think it's time to install the throttle body. Alright, now I can attempt to get this on. I don't know which way that goes through yet. I'll figure that out. Alright, now I've got the cable on there. That wasn't that much fun. Put the, not the throttle body, to the plenum. Get some stuff plugged in. Definitely don't want to get these too tight. Alright, now we got to pay our attention to the brake booster vacuum source. This was the line I had to replace. It had rubbed through and caused a lean code. But I want to pay attention to this flange because there's a locating pin that has been broken, I guess from improper installation. So I'm going to have to remove this. I don't think this is going to cause a major issue, but it's definitely not right. I definitely don't like that. Yeah, I had to break it off. It was folded over like it had been clamped down on it. And that's for sitting in this hole right here. It's like a locating pin. And it's not the end of the world. I don't think it's going to be a disaster by any stretch, but it's just one more thing to hopefully not come back and bite me, you know? All right, now I can get that tightened down. And then. Goes in there. And then you slide this little spacer in here. It keeps that from popping out. Just like so. Now, we're going to have to play with this a little bit to make sure it doesn't rub on the airbox. I think that's what caused the problem the last time. But now it's no leaks. And that's what we want. Okay, now let's see if we can do some fuel and evap. Where is the other fuel line? There's this one. This is a lot of fun. There's two. Okay, the feed is done. Now we just need to tighten the return. Okay. We're getting there. That can go like so. I don't remember how this really sits up here. We're just gonna guess and say that it's like this. And then we're going to take the evap line. I'm going to have to look into how this is routed. This doesn't look correct to me. It could be correct. It just doesn't look correct. So maybe this goes underneath here. I don't know. I'll look into that and I'll be back. Now it's time to install the new Porsche branded radiator hose. I think it goes this way. It probably goes the other way. Yeah, I think it goes this way. Yeah, that looks a lot more of the correct. Alright, now we have some other hoses. And I'm missing all the clamps. Okay. Do I have clamps? Well, I can put this one in. I'm just loosely putting all the hoses on, and then once I get all the ends connected, that's when I'll tighten the clamps. Now, unfortunately, I'm using a BMW clamp here. I really just hope it doesn't start leaking power steering fluid. I'd be really sad.
Okay.
All right, I'm happy with that. About as happy as I can get. Now, this hose goes here, but I got to find a small clamp for that. All right, all the hoses are now connected. Now we'll get a muffler installed. Start with the passenger side. If I remember right, these were pretty easy. Do I have to pull the tires off for this? Yes, tires have to come off. Almost. Oh, I think we're close. I think that'll work. Did that help? Nope. Nope, sure didn't. Oh, I think we did it. Yeah, so before I get those tightened down, let's get the other side in. That side was significantly easier. I remember playing this game quite a bit the last time I had the mufflers off. Because when I bought this car, it had these like little straight pipe pieces. The car sounded terrible, way too loud. Shouldn't be as bad with modified mufflers. I think they're aftermarket too. All right, we'll pinch these down, start getting everything tight.
Torque to spec.
Now from that angle, it probably doesn't look like it's centered, but I think that's as good as it's going to get for the moment. I use some Toyota hardware. Hopefully it makes the car a little bit more reliable. Before I forget, I'm going to get this ground strap installed. Now we're going to install a secondary air injection or smog pump. It looks like someone has broken the connector mount for this in the past. It looks like that's good enough. Clamps in the exact same spot it was. Something else I just noticed is the connector for the mass airflow sensor has a Mercedes logo on it. So it has some BMW connectors on the main harness, some Mercedes connectors. That's pretty cool. Just a hodgepodge of parts. I'm kind of used to that. Now, let's put the airbox in it. This should be pretty simple in my mind. It is becoming unsimple. Come back here, clamp. I need you. Oh no, my light is in the way. There we are. That's much better. Maybe not for you guys. You guys might not be able to see any better, but I can see better. Well, I've made a mistake, and that was not looking at the oil filter before now. So as a normal step in anything I do, you pull the oil filter out and you take a look at it. Well, here's the oil filter, and well, let me show you what I found. Now, I'm going to do my best to show you what I found here. I don't know what's blue that's inside of an engine, but it's inside the filter. And there's lots of junk. It's not a lot of metal, which is, I suppose, a good thing. There's more dirt and junk. And then as you keep going, there's a couple pieces of metal. There's another piece of something blue. More junk. I don't know what this stuff is. There's another piece of something blue and a piece of metal right above it. Anytime you find metal in a filter, it's bad. Like there's no okay, that's fine metal. There's a big piece of blue stuff in there. But this is not what I want to find. I'm not happy about this. I mean, this is the stuff that happens from putting an engine together in a dirty environment. Now, I'm not saying that I'm perfect with that at all, but I've never had one of my oil filters look like this. So I'm going to have to get whatever this stuff is out of here. And if you have an idea what this stuff is, what is blue? That's what I want to know. You know, I'm used to seeing some dirt and debris. It's a filter. That's what it's designed for, but I keep seeing blue pieces. What could be blue? I think I saw a piece of red something earlier. There's another piece of blue. It's almost in every pleat. The fact that it's not loaded with metal kind of makes me happy. I say that, and I think I found some more. I don't know. I don't know if that's metal or not. I mean, I've definitely seen filters. There's some nice blue stuff. Definitely seen filters loaded with bearing material. And, oh, there we go. There's a piece of red stuff. What is colored inside of an engine? You guys got to tell me, because I don't know. Now I'm going to put a filter back in it, and this is a sacrificial filter. Basically, I'm going to run some cheap oil in here for 15-20 minutes with some engine flush, and at that point I will change the oil again and we'll take a look at see what this filter caught. That's the best that we can hope for. Now it's time to fill it up with the cheapest oil I have here, since it's only going to be in this engine for about 15 or 20 minutes. I should probably use a funnel. Does that work that way? Sweet. God, German engineers think of everything. Now this thing's filled halfway up. Let's put some engine flush in here. Again, this is only going to be in here for a short period of time. We just want to try to get all of that debris to the filter. That's the goal here. Now we'll fill it up the rest of the way. In order to fill this thing up with coolant, or, well, water in this case, I'm going to have to vacuum fill it. So we're going to set that in there. Tighten that up so it makes a nice seal. That's good. And now we connect this. Well, I sure didn't plan on that. All right, let's try this. That'll work. So as you can see, sorry, there's lots of noises. It is drawing a vacuum on the cooling system. I want it to get to around 20, and then I'm going to close the valve, disconnect the air supply, let it sit to make sure that we hold vacuum before we put anything in it. Alright, there's about where we want to stop. I'll disconnect this. And we'll disconnect this. And we're going to let it sit and see if it maintains vacuum. Well, here we are, about 2 minutes later. And since it's holding vacuum, I can assume that there are no leaks. So let's go ahead and get this all connected. Start filling this thing up with water. First, we'll hook up the supply. There we go. Close the valve here. Perfecto. Of course, instead of using a regular bucket, I have this kitty litter bucket. I've cleaned it all the way. There's no sediment or anything like that in it. And we're going to add a little bit of Cascade here. And now everything I read said to use as little as possible. So I'm going to use the, well, I was told a teaspoon, but I don't have a teaspoon. I have this spoon from like the local Chinese place. I assume it's the same. So we're just going to, I'm missing, okay. That should be enough, I hope. All right, now we need to open the valves. And I've got the pickup at the bottom of this. There's one. There's two. This may take a minute here. Now I got this one here. It's got some water in it just in case I run low. So it's pulling the water out of this and filling the cooling system with it. Not much vacuum left, so we're going to keep going until there's none. This should be full. All right, I have the valves closed. I can disconnect this. Should be pretty full. Let's remove the vacuum. What do you know? We've got liquid in there. The next thing I'm going to do is pull the fuel pump relay. That way I can crank the engine without it running. I want to build some oil pressure before it starts to fire. And it's behind this. Actually, no, it's up here. It's right here.
Let go.
Okay. There we go. Now let's give it 12 volts and see if it cranks. All right. What will happen here? Need more power.
Hold, please.
Okay, let's see if this is any better. Ooh, it's getting faster. Okay. Well, oil level shows full, so that's good. I think we're good enough. I think that's enough. Let's put the relay back in it, open the garage door, and see if it runs. Please start. Please start. Please start with no noises. Oh, it's doing stuff. Our steering pump's a little loud, that's all right. Neat! This is great. Oh, this is awesome. You know, I just have to run it a whole bunch and drain everything, fill it back up again. It's not a huge deal. Well, it's got good oil pressure, but it's still cold. I'm just going to let it idle for a while, let it come up to temperature. Once it comes up to temperature, I'll shut it off, and we'll let it sit for a minute, and I'll pull the oil filter out and see what we see. And then I'll end up draining the water, it's not coolant, draining that, and probably running tap water through it 2 or 3 more times until I feel like I got everything out, and then I'll fill it up with the right stuff. Well, we've got some temperature in it now, and it's got oil pressure still, which is always a plus. I think it's time we shut it down. I'll let it cool down, and then guess it's time to drain some fluids. Now it's cooled off. Let's pull the filter and see if there's anything that shouldn't be in there. So let that sit here. Well, guys, here's the moment of truth. I don't see anything. There's not a speck of dirt in here. I mean, maybe stuff I can't see, but what a relief. I can't explain how much happier I am right now than I was when I pulled that last filter out. I think I'm going to drain the oil. I'm going to let it drain overnight. That way as much of that old stuff comes out as possible. And I'll fill it back up at a later date. Let's get the coolant out of it. Excuse me, water. Let's get the water out of it and see what that looks like. Now it's time to start on the cooling system. First we're going to drain the heater hose. Let's get some of these lights out of the way. Now the goal here is to make the least amount of mess as possible. I don't think that is going to be possible. Oh, there's more green coolant. It's not what I like to see. Let's use the air nozzle All right, nothing bad could possibly happen by doing this. I'm just gonna aim this down. Oh my gosh. Remind me not to have Taco Bell. Yeah, this is a mess. Oh. It's getting worse somehow. This is kind of entertaining. The color is not what I'd like to see. What if I... Oh yeah. Now I'm just going to slide the hose onto the pipe, and then we'll go to another location and try the same thing. Oh boy, green. Well, that wasn't too much. But I can still see there's a whole bunch of intermix inside there. I'm going to wipe that out, at least get that much out of it. The rubber hose doesn't just that. And, you know, we did flush the cooling system with the engine out, but we did not flush the engine with the engine out. So I think it's time to clean some of this up. Let's take this hose off next. I don't suspect anything's going to come out of there. We're going to do it anyway. Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of green coolant. Bunches, whole bunches. Gotta get all this stuff out of this. This is what's called a controlled spill. Now we need to go to the front. Okay, so actually instead of going to the very front, I'm going to go to where the pipes that traverse the entire body connect to the hoses that go towards the engine. So I'm going to pick the one that's lower, which is this one here. Well, that was actually more clear water that time. Here goes something. I'm sure every last drop will end up in my little bin here. Or miss it entirely and go everywhere. Oh my God, it's not even worth it. It's fine, it's fine. Well, that's water, so that's good. It's not, there was a little bit of coolant in there. I can still see a little green tinge, but we're gonna have to do this a few more times. And I'm not gonna bore you guys with doing that on video. That's just filling and draining and filling and draining. There's only so many Taco Bell jokes I can make. So this is what the cooling system had in it. Now keep in mind I pumped this thing full of tap water and some Cascade, and I've also run Simple Green through it a bunch, but I didn't clean the motor out, and most of the coolant I think was in the actual engine and not in the cooling system, which is why most of the green stuff came out closer towards the engine and the clear stuff came out on the car side. Now I know it did run for a while, but still we're just going to have to fill and drain and fill and drain and fill and drain. I'm going to run tap water through this thing until I get only clear coming out. And in the process, I hope I get all of the intermix that's in the cooling system, which I don't really think is that much, but there is still some. So this process will kill two birds with one stone, getting rid of the wrong coolant and getting rid of intermix. If it seems like there's still a lot of work left to do, that's because there is. I'm nowhere near done, but it feels like the majority of work, the bulk of it, is behind me. This video had one goal, and that was to make this car run. And with relative ease, it fired up, it idles smooth, makes good oil pressure, it doesn't push coolant out, it doesn't have any leaks. I'm happy, but I wasn't happy when I pulled that oil filter out. That made my heart sink. That night, I had all these scenarios in my head. Do I have to pull the engine back out, find out where all that junk came from? Do I have to find another used engine? Those are really expensive. Do I swap it with something else? Do I cut my losses and move on to something different? Thankfully, I don't have to do any of those things. The filter did its job. Likely, all of that dirt and debris was from when that engine was assembled. The filter did its job, and the second filter didn't really have to do much. But it proved that I think the engine is healthy, and that's the most important. I think the engine's good. I don't have to worry about it that much. Still a 160,000 mile engine, I think. There will always be some concern. But remember, this is not a project car, right? It's not a project car. There's still several things that I'd like to do to this. Obviously, I still need to flush the cooling system. I need to get all the intermix out of it. I need to get all the green coolant out. I know many of you give me trouble. The green coolant doesn't matter. Well, this car is supposed to have G40 in it, which is pink. So that's what it's going to get. It's not the color, it's what the color signifies. And I still have to fix the front half of the cooling system. So every single radiator hose in this car was replaced with a brand new hose, which is great, except these budget hoses, nicest way to put it, don't really fit as good as the OEM hoses do, which means that the pipes and the hoses don't really fit in their brackets and holders the way I'd like them to. I'd like everything to bolt in, snap into place, go where it's supposed to go. So I bought all brand new Porsche hoses, and no, they're not that expensive. They're like $10 more a piece than the aftermarket hoses. They're just harder to get. You just have to wait for them. So I got them all in. I'll likely replace all the rubber hoses. I think there's 8 more to go. Not too many. And then I have to put all the plastics underneath the car back on, put the wheels back on, and hopefully take it for a smile-inducing test drive. That's the goal. I hope you enjoyed this update. I know it's been a bit since I had one. I hope to have more updates on my other cars in the near future. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one.